Hello everyone, welcome to another Star Wars figure tutorial, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make my custom Luke Skywalker from the Mandalorian. This guy was a lot of fun to make, and he looks, in my opinion, awesome. He is just a Jedi Knight body with some big modifications to him. The cloak in particular is something I'm especially proud of. This guy does have an accurate body underneath, so it'll go fully into how to do that, how to make that belt that he wears, and how to make him the proper proportions. So hopefully this tutorial is easy to follow, and without further ado, let's do it. As far as materials go, you're going to need a hot glue gun, some masking tape, Vallejo gloss varnish, Vallejo black, and Vallejo silver. These two are Vallejo air. Going to need an X-Acto knife and a small brush. Also going to need something to cut the fabric. I use these nice small scissors. These are made by Fiskars and they're great for cutting cloth. Also going to need a blow dryer and Vaseline. Also, you're going to need an iron. What I recommend when you iron the figure is when you iron, specifically for the cape, is that you put the cape down on the ground, you put some sort of cloth, t-shirt, or thin towel on top of it, and then you iron on top of the towel. If you iron the cloak directly, you could burn it. It's this really synthetic material, and it's super susceptible to burning, so if you do want to iron the cloak, put it underneath some sort of other thin fabric first before you do it, otherwise you could burn it. Optionally, you can use an airbrush. You could dye. This is mostly for painting the cloak. You could dye the cloak black, but for me it's easier just to use my airbrush. So it's up to you what to use there. Don't need an airbrush, but I recommend it. It makes things just faster and easier. Personally, I think that every customizer should have one, but I understand that it's kind of a unique item that not a lot of people just have, so recommend that. Also going to need a drill with a couple of bits. I believe in this tutorial I use 5/16 and 3/8 drill bits, however you might need more depending on. And then finally you're just going to need some sort of clear coat. I highly suggest using matte clear coat as opposed to gloss. This right here is my standby go-to Krylon UV resistant clear matte acrylic coating, not gloss. This stuff dries super fast and does a great job at not only making your figure matte so he's not shiny or glossy, but it also seals it and protects it from damage. So I highly recommend this. I think in the video I say to use TS-18. That stuff's great too, but this is just what I happen to have on hand, so both of those would work. To make this guy, you're going to need two figures, the first of which is Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight. This was a Walmart exclusive a few years back. However, there was just recently some more stock uncovered, I believe from France based on the subtext. So if you can pick one of these up, it's going to be huge to making this guy. Next figure you're going to need is one that's quite readily available right now. That is the 40th anniversary Bespin Luke. We're probably going to use him for his belt and for his face, which there's no good way to say that, but it's what we're going to do. So these two figures should be all you need for this tutorial. This is a pretty simple one, should be pretty easy to do. The figures are not too hard to find, so I'm hoping this one will be pretty accessible. So let's see how it goes. I didn't notice this till it was pointed out to me, but the Jedi Knight Luke appears to be almost like, I don't know, like half a centimeter to a centimeter taller than Bespin Luke. It's kind of strange. I think that this one's definitely too tall. His thighs in particular are really, really, really long. If you lower his shoulders down to about the same height as the Empire Strikes Back Luke, it seems like they're about in proportion, just the legs are too long. So I'm going to try and fix that first. You don't have to do this, but this is something that you can do if you want the height to be fixed. I do think he looks a bit sort of gangly with the long leg look, and I'm hoping that by lowering the leg height it'll make him look a little bit better. But again, this is not something you have to do, and in fact if you don't really feel comfortable with this, I wouldn't do it. But if you want him to look, I would say, as good as possible, I would do it. So let me try and do that real quick. Alright, so to get these Lukes to be the same size, I'm going to be taking off 3/16 of an inch off the top of the thighs of each of these. So for here, that puts it about right here. And on this one, measuring 3 tick marks down from the inch mark, puts it about right here. I like to use pencil because you can easily get rid of it, and it's easy to see on this black outfit because it shines. So you use to mark it. Again, I'm using 3/16. That's just 3 tick marks down from the inch line. Now that's ready, we can begin to pop off all the parts to get them ready to be cut. Alright, so for now we can put aside 40th anniversary Luke. We can just focus solely on Return of the Jedi Luke. First thing we're going to do is just get a blow dryer and heat him up. Alright, so Jedi Knight Luke has been disassembled. I took his legs out, I took his pelvis out from his torso, I also took off this. I'm going to repaint this tunic he has because it looks a little bit kind of like purpley compared to the actual figure. I don't know if you can see that. I'm just going to paint it black. I don't know if this is some detail I missed, but I think it looks weird, the kind of like purplish hue it has, so I'm just going to paint it black. I also took the head off the joint, and then I took the hair off the head. This thing I'll say is when you do this, be very, very, very careful because this plastic here is really much weaker than what I'm used to. So if you pull the head too hard, just pull off from the neck, you could potentially rip the plastic here. So what I would suggest is hold the neck peg down with your fingers and then pry off with your thumb the chin. That way you won't risk ripping this off. I also say take your time with pulling the hair out because it is very soft and it can rip. Mine did rip a little bit. I don't know if you can see it here. It ripped a little bit right here. However, I just super glued it and you can't even tell. So just be careful about that and keep in mind. Alright, so the legs have been removed. Now I'm just going to go ahead and heat them up using a blow dryer again. I'm going to do this for about a minute. And then once I'm done heating them up, they're nice and the plastic's going to be nice and soft. Go ahead and cut them at that line we drew. Again, this is at 3/16 of an inch. I'm going to go do that now. So let's see how that works. There we go, there's one. And two. Alright, so now that these have been shortened, the peg no longer really exists. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and take this, I'm going to drill it out, and then I'm going to make a new peg using Vaseline and hot glue, same as I did for the Clone Trooper neck. So let's try that out now. Alright, so I have my drill bit here. This is a 5/16 drill bit, and I'm just going to go straight down the leg until there's enough room for the hip joint to fit. So let's do that. Just checking every now and then to make sure I don't mess anything up or drill too deep. It's always good to be slow when you do this because you never want to ruin a figure. Let's test fit. Alright, that's looking pretty good right there. Now to do the other leg. I'm holding the leg up top pretty close high because if you hold it too low and the drill catches, it could potentially twist the joint and maybe mess up the knee joint. So I'm just holding it high up so in case it does catch, I can easily let go and release it. Like that. If the drill does catch the plastic, just pull it out, release it, and then go back in. Alright, now let's test fit this one. It's looking pretty good. So there's something else we can do here. I'm just gonna maybe drill a little bit into the top here with a bigger drill bit. That way there's more space because it's a little bit tight right now here. So just gonna make a little more room for the leg. Now switching to a 3/8 drill bit. So I'm just gonna use this at the top. You don't need to go all the way down with the 3/8 drill bit, just enough to make space for the extra sort of wider part of this peg right here. So let's see now, put it on, give it a little test fit. Yeah, that fits much nicer, and now the plastic isn't being pushed out, so it fits slim to the leg. Gonna do the same thing with the other one. Now I'm just going to clean out both of the pegs with the 3/8 inch drill bit. That way I can make sure that there's no plastic residue remaining inside. If you leave any in there, you can see there's some in here. It could make the joint difficult. There we go, this one's clean now. And this one's clean now. So now they should fit perfectly on the leg. And they do, that looks great. Awesome. Alright, so now that the legs are prepared and the torso is ready, we're going to do the same Vaseline and hot glue joint method we always do. However, this time, instead of doing it on the neck, we're going to be doing it to make some leg joints. Just get a nice thin layer of Vaseline all over the joints. Try not to have too many like clumps, but also make sure it's, you know, fully covering it so that the hot glue doesn't adhere to this part of the joint. There we go. That's nice and covered. I'm just going to go over this one more time. That looks good. So now that these pegs are covered in Vaseline, we can now go ahead and put the hot glue in. Have my hot glue gun set to high heat. Just gonna get the legs. Not sure quite exactly how much I'm gonna fill these up. I think I'm just gonna go kind of maybe leave a couple, maybe like a centimeter from the top. So how much I'm gonna fill it. So I'm gonna do that. Go. And this is the right leg, so it'll go on the right peg. There we go. I'm just going to hold that there for a little bit. You can also turn it while you do it. You want to push it, keep it tight as possible. Keep on turning it. While it's drying, you can start to wipe off any of the hot glue that spills over. Luckily, I think I filled mine up at almost the exact right height, so there's not a whole lot. You can feel the hot glue starting to dry inside, which is good. Just gonna do a little cleanup. Just gonna get my X-Acto knife and just kind of get some of the hot glue that's spilled out. Should be pretty easy just to wipe off after you give it like a couple seconds to cool down. There we go. Now we'll hit the other leg. Again, just gonna do the same thing. Get some hot glue, fill it up, leave about a centimeter of space at the top. Then we'll just push this in. And hold it down. You can keep turning it to make sure that it forms a nice symmetrical joint. This one dried pretty quickly. So now the legs are done. What I would do is I would let these dry for maybe like 5 minutes, let the glue finish, wipe off any residue, and then wash it off in water to make sure there's no Vaseline or anything on top of the surface that would make a weird coating. So yeah, just gonna let this guy sit for 5 minutes. Now I'm going to take the 40th anniversary Bespin Luke. I'm going to remove his hair. Bespin Luke has been heated up and separated. We have his head here, his hair here, and we have the holster. The holster and the head we want to hold on to. However, the body and the hair you can, I don't know, put away, put in a box. You don't need it anymore. All you need is the head and the holster from this figure. Just want to show real quick why we're doing this head swap and hair swap. On the left is the one that comes on the Jedi Knight body, and on the right is the one that comes on the Bespin body. I think the actual quality of the printing looks a little bit better on the Jedi Knight body. However, the face themselves, I think the right bears a better resemblance to Mark Hamill, which is why we're doing this swap. The left just seems a little bit more kind of gaunty, I guess you would say, like just a little bit more thin, whereas the right seems to just be a little bit better, which is why we're using it. Now for the hair, the left here is The Empire Strikes Back here, and the right is Return of the Jedi. He actually has a different haircut, so it wouldn't be right to use this same haircut for him. The one on the right, which is the Return of the Jedi look, also matches the look he has at the end of The Mandalorian, which is why we're going to use this one instead of the Empire Strikes Back one, which is more similar to his A New Hope look, where he has like the middle part. Okay, so now for fitting the hair to the head, one thing we're going to have to tackle is that the hair uses different pegs for each head. The one on the original Return of the Jedi figure is a lot bigger than the Empire Strikes Back figure, so we're going to have to cut the head to accommodate that. Also, this one has basically just earlobes and no ear, whereas this one has a full ear, so we're going to have to cut the ears off to accommodate the hair as well. And then also inside the hair, there's some like pegs on the side. Let me try to get this in focus. There's some pegs on the side. I'm going to just cut those with an X-Acto knife, just make a little bit more room. And then we should be able to attach it, so let's go ahead and try that. First, I'm going to go for the pegs on the side. Just cutting these, being very careful not to mess up the hair. You could also heat up the hair before you do this, and that would probably make it a little bit easier to do. Once you have a good way, I'm just going to go back the other way. There we go, there's one. I'll get the one on the other side. There we go. And now we'll deal with the head peg. What I'm going to do to make things easier is I'm just going to slice. Let me zoom in a little bit. I'm just going to cut down the top here like this, and I'm just going to cut in the back like this, just so there's no room for error here. Alright, we should be getting close to having it fit. Now I'm just going to cut the ears off. I'm going to leave a little bit of the earlobe showing. There we go. On the other side. Let's do a quick little test fit, see if that works yet. It's looking pretty close. Now you would just want to do some small tweaks just to make sure and get it to fit properly. But yeah, we're pretty much there now. I'm just cutting off the top of his head now just to make a little bit more room. And also the back too. Let's see how it looks. That's looking pretty darn good. You can compare it, put it back onto the old head just to see what changes need to be made. So you can see where the hair sits and where it should sit on the new head. But yeah, basically just want to keep kind of going back and forth and checking to make sure you can get it exactly correct. But I think we're almost there. Alright, I've gotten the hair to sit nicely on the head. Just a little bit of cutting in the back into the front just to make sure it sat properly. So now that's done, I'm just going to go and attach the hair using super glue, and then I'm just going to drill the joint out here. Alright, so now that all that's done, we're now going to work on the belt. Basically, all we're going to do is we're going to take the Empire Strikes Back belt, we're going to cut off this little pouch here on the front, we're going to cut off this holster here, we're going to cut off these pouches, we're going to keep one of these pouches though and put it over here to make the belt that Luke has in Return of the Jedi / The Mandalorian. So I'm just going to use my X-Acto knife and be very careful here. What I like to do this is just kind of try and lay it flat and then just cut. Make sure we keep sort of the contour of the belt, but get rid of that pouch. Let's go over here. And we'll go over here. Actually, it's easier, I should mention this, to cut off the bottom of the pouch first, like this. That should make it a little bit easier now. There we go. Okay, the pouch is gone. Now we can go ahead and cut off this holster. Do the same sort of thing. I think this time though I'm just going to try and, yeah, I'm just going to go here. I'm just going to cut it so that the holster is lying straight. There you go. Alright, so I finished trimming the belt. I took off the holster here, I took off a little extra bit. I cut off one of the belt boxes. I left the other one on just because it's not that big of a deal. With the one I cut off, I saved it though. And I'm going to put it right here on his right hip, just like how it is in Return of the Jedi. Just going to use a little bit of super glue here. Going to put it right here where that holster was. Then just going to attach the pouch right there. And here we go. Now this is done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slide it onto the tunic and put it right there in the middle. If you want, and you don't want to repaint the tunic, you could repaint this now. You could hand brush it or airbrush it. However, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it onto the tunic, glue it on, and I'm just going to airbrush the whole thing black and then just paint the silver since I'm going to paint this black anyways. Let's do that. Okay, so there's the belt centered on the tunic. I'm just going to airbrush it all black, and then we should be pretty much done. Alright, so here's my finished tunic. I used the belt we just made, and I just slipped it on, and then I airbrushed this whole thing, the whole robe and everything black. I thought that the original like purplish color was kind of weird, so I just painted it black. It's how it appears in the movie and in the Mandalorian, so I went with that. And then after I let it dry a little bit, I painted the details in with silver. I just used Vallejo Air Black and Vallejo Air Silver. With these two paints, you can definitely hand paint them, but airbrushing is just so much faster. So I airbrushed the black and then hand painted the silver. Now this is done, we're going to go ahead and just slide this tunic onto Luke. The best way I found to do this is to open it up from the bottom and kind of raise his arms, put his arms through first and just kind of push it up through it. So I'm going to do that off camera. I'm going to heat this up with a blow dryer first just to make it a little more pliable, but it shouldn't be too hard to do. So I'm going to do that now. Something else that you should do as well is to paint his right hand, his gloved hand. I just airbrushed that black. Pretty simple. You could hand paint that as well, but airbrushing is always quicker and it leaves no brush strokes, so I would recommend airbrushing that. He's pretty much ready to go now. All I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up the torso, put the legs in, and then we could do the final sealing on him, but he's almost done. Alright, so now that I'm done assembling him, I'm just going to give him a quick little clear coat. I'm going to use, I believe it's called Tamiya TS-18. It's a flat matte clear coat that will not only seal it, but it'll also make it so he's less shiny. In order to do that, I've covered up the boots with painter's tape so that they stay glossy. And you could also cover up the hand, but I want that to get a clear coat. I'm just going to put a gloss coat on top of it, so it's not a big deal. So I'm going to go paint that now. Alright, so the final step for this guy is me applying the gloss coat. I'm going to apply a gloss coat to his glove and to his eyes and mouth. It just makes him look a little bit more realistic. As usual, we're going to be using Vallejo gloss varnish. This bottle is a little bit messed up, I apologize. This is an acrylic-based resin that basically makes everything shiny. So pour a little bit out here. There we go. I'm going to put just a bit on the tip of my brush. And I'll start off with the eyes first. Go ahead and zoom in for that. Alright, we'll hit his eyes first, and this really makes the eyes look a lot more lifelike, especially after the matte coat. Adding just a bit of gloss here will really bring out some life into these figures. Hit the other eye. Get some more on the first eye. Yeah, that looks perfect. Now let's hit the lips as well. Perfect. Now this will give the eyes that shine that makes them look a lot more realistic and lifelike. So that's good. And now we're going to go ahead and hit the glove. Glove's going to be the same process, just going to use a wider brim brush. And just going to paint this gloss varnish on. You could also use this for the boots, but since we kept them covered, they stayed glossy, so you don't need to do it. And boom, there we go. Now we just let it dry. Alright, so the gloss enamel on the hand has dried. You can now touch it. That looks really good. I'm a big fan of that. The eyes also look good, nice and lifelike. So now that this is all done, it's time for the final part, and that's going to be the cloak. The only physical manipulation I do this thing is to cut these little things attaching the hood to the bottom of the cloak. D-Last Prime on Instagram suggested that I do that, so I think it's a good idea. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Just going to use my standard fabric cutting scissors. I'm just going to go ahead and look in here and just cut these little strings here. Just going to pull it open, expose them. There they are. Just cut those right there. There we go. The cloak's free there. And then on the other side, just going to pull it open. Get my scissors underneath. Then carefully, there we go. Now I've cut both, just gonna pull the string out, get rid of that, don't need it anymore. And now this should allow for the cloak to be posed much better, and you can do it in the both hood up and hood down configuration. I'm just gonna put a dab of super glue on the outside to make sure that the area I just cut doesn't fray at all. So I'm just gonna put right here. Just gotta put a little dab right there. That'll keep everything in place. Do the same thing on the other side, because fraying is an issue a lot of times with fabric like this. There we go. Now both sides have been sealed, if you will. And then finally, I'm going to paint this black because, I don't know, my opinion is the cloak might be brown, but if it looks black in the show, then I'm going to paint it black because that's how it looks. I'm just going to airbrush this black, however you could easily dye this black. I'm not an expert on dyeing, but generally you just mix paint and put it in water and just let it sit in there and it'll come out black. I'm not going to do a tutorial on dyeing, but that's the general idea of it. If you want to do that, you can look it up. I'm just going to airbrush this black. That's the easiest thing for me to do, so I'll do that and I'll be right back. Alright, so I painted the cloak black. It's looking pretty good. However, I think I'm going to iron it real quick because you can't see it on camera, but it's super wrinkly, so I'm just going to give it some little cleaning up, and then after that, it's ready to put on and to start shaping. Alright, so here's the cape after I ironed it. As you can see, it's pretty freaking nice. It's nice and smooth. There's no more wrinkles. I did some small modifications to the hood. Up top you can see I trimmed the, right where the seam is. The seam is right here at the base of the collar here. If you don't trim it, it's almost like some sort of like turtleneck where the seam is so long that it pops out. The seam looks kind of like this. I see the seam right here. So basically what I did was I trimmed it so the extra fold here was as short as possible on the collar, so I trimmed it down right to the seam line, and that helps it look less noticeable, because here on the cape it's normally like a centimeter long, so I trimmed it off all the way down to the bottom to where the stitching is. I also then did something different with the actual cloak itself. If you open it up, so with the actual cloak itself, I folded it back on the ends here. So this is originally on the front. I folded it to the back and I super glued it with tiny dabs, so that way it would lie closed more naturally, because otherwise the extra fabric makes it sort of like puff out. So this way it just falls straight, which looks really good, and having this clean seam here makes it look almost like some sort of real fancy soft goods cape, when in reality it's just a Hasbro one. So yeah, you see I accidentally put a little bit too much here. I just did a little super glue and I folded it over, and then I ironed the whole thing flat like this. I ironed it flat on the front and then flat on the back, and it looks so awesome. I also put little dabs of super glue up here at the top next to the hood. That way the hood can like lie naturally instead of having the sides like flare out. You could still put the hood up, but I'm going to leave it down for now. So yeah, that's all I did. Pretty easy, and it's going to look great. So I'm going to go ahead and put it on the figure and see how it looks. Alright, so here's the finished product. Luke Skywalker in his Mandalorian outfit. I have to say, I'm really impressed with how this turned out. I did not expect it to look so good. Especially the cloak. I was a little bit like concerned about how it would turn out, but I think it looks amazing. Especially with the folded line right there. The folded cloak just helps it drape so much better and looks so much more realistic. So yeah, he has his cloak on. The hood could still be raised, but I'm going to leave it here just because it looks so good. And I really want to show off that head sculpt, that awesome face that we made. I think that just looks amazing. You could still, pull the cloak back. Cloak's fully removable. The figure still has his accurate outfit underneath. Gloved hand, correct proportions now. I just think this guy looks so cool. So hopefully this helps you guys out. Hopefully you guys can make him on your own. Might be bragging a little bit, but I'm just so happy with him. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought of the tutorial. Let me know if there's anything you wish I did differently. And yeah, send me pictures. If you guys make this guy, send them. I'll feature it. Until next time, peace.